What if I told you that everything around you, every road, every building, every city light you see at night, started as nothing? Absolutely nothing. Just a group of people standing beside a river with no plan, no map, and no idea that they were about to change the world forever. This is the story of cities. From the mud huts of ancient Mesopotamia to the stone temples of Egypt, from the walled cities of medieval Europe to the golden libraries of Baghdad, and all the way to the glass skyscrapers of today, cities have always been the heartbeat of human civilization. And today, we are going all the way back to the very beginning. For most of human history, people never stayed in one place. They walked, they hunted, they followed animals across open land and slept wherever they could find shelter. But then, around 5000 BC, something changed. In the land between two great rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates, a group of people made a decision that would alter the course of history forever. They stopped. They looked at the land around them, the fertile soil, the flowing water, the warm sun, and they decided to stay. They planted crops, they built shelters out of mud and clay, they stored food for the winter, and slowly, over many generations, what started as a few simple huts beside a river became something the world had never seen before: a settlement, a home, a community. Uruk. The name might not mean much to you today, but 5,000 years ago, this was the most important place on Earth. Located in what is now modern Iraq, Uruk was home to over 50,000 people at a time when most of the world was still living in small, scattered villages. And what made Uruk truly remarkable was not just its size. It had a government, it had laws, it had a system of trade where goods were bought and sold across hundreds of miles. It had massive temples that rose above the flat landscape like mountains built by human hands. And most importantly, it had writing. For the first time in history, humans were recording their thoughts, their trades, their stories on clay tablets using a system called cuneiform. Uruk was not just a city. Uruk was a blueprint. Every city that has ever existed since then, every city you have ever lived in or visited, owes something to Uruk. While Mesopotamia was building cities for the living, another great civilization was rising along the banks of the Nile. Egypt, and the Egyptians had a different vision for their cities. They were not just building places to live, they were building places to last forever. The pyramids of Giza, built around 2560 BC, were not just tombs. They were the center of entire cities. Cities with workers, engineers, administrators, bakers, doctors, and priests. Tens of thousands of people, organized, fed, and housed, all working toward a single, impossible goal: to build something so massive, so permanent, that it would still be standing thousands of years later. And as you know, they succeeded. What the Egyptians understood before anyone else is that a city is not just buildings. A city is a shared belief, a shared purpose. And when people believe in something strongly enough, they can move mountains, literally. But no matter how great a city becomes, nothing lasts forever. Empires rise and empires fall. Wars, droughts, disease, and time itself slowly wore down even the greatest ancient civilizations. Cities that once held millions of people were swallowed by sand and silence. But from those ruins, something new was already taking shape. Rome. At its peak, the city of Rome was home to over 1 million people. 1 million. In a world where most cities had only a few thousand residents, Rome was something else entirely. Rome had roads, thousands of miles of perfectly engineered roads connecting every corner of Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. Roads so well built that some of them still exist today, 2,000 years later. Rome had aqueducts, massive stone structures that carried fresh water from distant mountains directly into the heart of the city, delivering clean water to homes, public baths, and fountains across the entire urban network. Rome had public spaces, the Forum, where citizens gathered to debate politics and trade ideas, the Colosseum, where 80,000 people sat together to watch events, libraries, schools, hospitals, and a postal system. Rome, more than any city before it, understood that a city is not just about buildings. It is about systems, about how water flows, how people move, how ideas spread, how laws are enforced. Rome did not just build a city. Rome invented what a city could be. And every city in the Western world still carries its DNA today. When Rome finally collapsed in the 5th century, Europe was thrown into what historians call the Dark Ages. Cities that once thrived under Roman order shrank, trade slowed, roads crumbled, and people, afraid of invasion and disease, retreated behind stone walls. But here is the thing about human beings. Even in the darkest of times, we find a way to build. Inside those walls, medieval cities slowly came to life. They were chaotic, narrow, winding streets with no real plan, houses built on top of each other, no running water. But they were alive. At the center of every medieval city stood the cathedral, often the tallest, most beautiful structure anyone in the city had ever seen. Around it grew markets, guilds of craftsmen, schools, and taverns. These cities were messy. They were crowded. They smelled terrible, if we are being honest. But they were the birthplace of something new, a middle class, citizens who were neither kings nor slaves, but free people with trades, skills, and voices of their own. While much of Europe was struggling in the dark, a golden age was flourishing on the other side of the world. In the 8th, 9th, and 10th centuries, cities like Baghdad, Cairo, and Cordoba became the most advanced places on earth. Baghdad, the round city, built in a perfect circle by the Abbasid Caliph al-Mansur, was at its peak home to over 1 million people, making it one of the largest cities in the world. It had hospitals with trained physicians. It had universities where scholars studied mathematics, astronomy, philosophy, and medicine. Its famous House of Wisdom contained over 400,000 books, at a time when most of Europe's monasteries had only a few dozen. Scholars from across the known world traveled to these cities to learn, and the knowledge they carried back with them, the mathematics, the astronomy, the medicine, would later ignite the Renaissance in Europe. The modern world as we know it owes a debt to these cities that is rarely acknowledged but absolutely undeniable. Then, in the late 1700s, in the workshops and factories of England, came an invention that would shatter everything humanity thought it knew about cities, about work, about life itself: the machine. The Industrial Revolution did not just change cities, it completely reinvented them. In the space of just 100 years, London grew from a city of 1 million people to a city of 6 million. 6 million. People poured in from the countryside by the thousands every single week, chasing the promise of work, wages, and a better life. Factories replaced fields. Steam engines replaced horses. The railway, that thundering iron machine, connected cities to each other for the first time in history, allowing goods, people, and ideas to travel at speeds that would have seemed magical just a generation earlier. And for the first time in all of human history, more people on Earth lived in cities than in villages. Think about that for a moment. For thousands of years, cities were the exception. Suddenly, they became the rule. The world had crossed a line it would never cross back. But this explosive growth came at a terrible price. The cities of the Industrial Revolution were, for most of their residents, places of suffering. The air was thick with smoke and soot from thousands of factory chimneys, so thick that on some days the sun could barely be seen through the haze. Diseases like cholera and typhoid swept through the overcrowded streets, killing tens of thousands, because sewage flowed openly through the same water people drank from. Children as young as 5 or 6 years old worked 12, 14, sometimes 16-hour shifts in dark factories, operating dangerous machines for a few pennies a day. The city had become a machine itself, efficient, powerful, productive, but utterly indifferent to the human beings inside it. Something had to change, and change it did. By the mid-1800s, cities began to fight back against their own chaos. Engineers designed the first underground sewage systems, carrying waste away from drinking water and dramatically reducing the spread of disease. Parks were carved out of dense urban areas: Central Park in New York, Hyde Park Park in London, giving city residents for the first time open green space to breathe, to walk, to simply exist outside the walls of a factory. Streets were widened and straightened. Building codes were introduced. Public transportation, first horse-drawn trams, then electric ones, began to move millions of people across cities every day. For the first time in history, humans were not just building cities, they were designing them, deliberately, thoughtfully, with a plan. The 20th century brought something that no human being in all of history had ever seen before: buildings that touched the clouds. With the invention of steel frames and the elevator in the late 1800s, architects suddenly realized that cities did not have to keep spreading outward. They could go up. The first skyscraper, the home insurance building in Chicago, stood just 10 stories tall. But it opened a door that has never been closed since. Within decades, buildings of 50, 80, 100 stories were rising across New York, Chicago, and eventually cities all over the world. The Empire State Building, the Chrysler Building, later the Petronas Towers in Kuala Lumpur, the Burj Khalifa in Dubai, standing at 828 meters, the tallest structure ever built by human hands. Cities had stopped spreading outward and started reaching for the sky. Today, over 4.5 billion people live in cities. That is more than half of every human being alive on this planet. Tokyo, Japan, the largest metropolitan area in the world, is home to 37 million people. 37 million. That is more than the entire population of Canada living in a single connected urban area. These megacities are the most complex systems that human beings have ever created. Every minute of every day, millions of decisions are being made simultaneously. Water is being pumped, electricity is flowing, food is being transported, waste is being processed. People are moving in every direction on roads, railways, and underground tunnels that stretch for thousands of kilometers. A modern megacity is not just a place, it is a living organism, breathing, consuming, producing, and evolving every single second of every single day. And the city is still evolving. Right now, in cities across the world, engineers and designers are working on something that would have seemed like pure science fiction just 50 years ago. Smart cities, urban environments where thousands of sensors monitor everything in real time. Traffic flow, air quality, energy consumption, water usage, and where artificial intelligence adjusts everything automatically to keep the city running as efficiently as possible. Buildings that generate their own electricity from solar panels. Vertical farms inside skyscrapers, growing food without soil, without sunlight, using a fraction of the water traditional agriculture requires. Self-driving vehicles that communicate with each other and with the city's infrastructure to eliminate traffic jams completely. The city of tomorrow is not just bigger than the cities of today. It is smarter, cleaner, more human. The story of cities is 7,000 years old, and we are still writing it. From a handful of people standing beside a river 7,000 years ago, with nothing but their hands and their imagination, to megacities of 37 million people connected by invisible networks of data and light. The city is the greatest invention in human history, not the wheel, not the internet, not the airplane. The city, because the city is what made all of those things possible. It brought people together. It concentrated minds, skills, and ideas in one place and created the conditions for everything else to happen. The next time you walk down a busy street, look around you. Every building, every road, every face you see is part of a story that started 7,000 years ago and is still being written today. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, because next time we are going even deeper into the history that shaped the world we live in. Thank you for watching.